Can we be sure our mics are on? We are live. And thank you all. At this time, I will call to order the Columbia Borough Planning Commission workshop session. Per our agenda, which was posted in the time required, we have approval of minutes from our June 18th. I will correct that to June 18th meeting, as we did not have a workshop July 16th. But I deferred approving the minutes until such time as we did have the workshop meeting. So at this time, I would ask for a motion with regard to the June 18th workshop minutes that are in your packet. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second from Marilyn. Any discussion regarding the minutes? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved. At this time, the main discussion this evening is going to be in the short-term rental ordinance, which you received a copy, which was contained in your packet. The reason we did not review this the last time in July, which we had planned on doing, was that at that point it was in the hands of the Borough Solicitor, Evan Gable, for his review. So we now have notations from him, and I'm going to turn this over to Jess to kind of read it. She was working with Evan on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that what we have in front of us is what we kind of arrived at our June meeting as to the particulars with the short-term rentals. So just took it from there, put it together, had it to Evan for his review, and that is what we have in front of us this evening. Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Mary, for the introduction. So I think unless anybody has some significant issue or conversation that they still want to hold, I think that this ordinance is in a format where we can take it out of work session, put it onto the Planning Commission's regular meeting agenda, and then forward it to Borough Council for their review. And I think what we'd be looking for is for them to give staff and the solicitor the go-ahead to send the draft ordinance to the county planning department and begin the adoption schedule. So that's ultimately, I think, where we want to get to at the end of this workshop. We've got a handful of things to review based on Evan's comments, and I'll go through those if everybody's okay with it.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so on page 1, Evan is asking, is the person in charge definition the same as what's in the rental ordinance? It's not, and that's one of the things that we talked about, because the rental ordinance identifies and defines the person in charge as the person in charge of the rental unit who's renting it.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, for this short-term rental ordinance, the person in charge is the person who's in charge of administering and leasing that rental unit, which for our purposes for the short-term rental is exactly what we need it to be. We may want to change the definition in the rental ordinance to match this. And we will be working with that, and I'll give a little bit of an update after we talk about the short-term rental ordinance. So I would agree, I would say the answer to his question is no, it is not the same, and it's not meant to be the same.
What is the long-term residential rental requirement for distance?
It doesn't, no, it's not distance.
There isn't.
It's the fact that the person in charge is a completely different definition. And so
Got it.
in this case, yeah, the person.
Versus responsible party or whatever.
Well, yeah, we'll have to check, because in the rental ordinance, the person in charge is the responsible adult leasing the rental unit.
Yeah,
And
the
that's,
responsible party, right?
yeah, so just different. They're apples and oranges.
Okay.
Did we
I see.
want to leave that approximately 15 miles, or
Yeah.
be specific?
No, we want to take, based on his comment, we,
15 miles.
yes, based on that comment, we want to take approximately out
Okay.
and just leave it at within 15 miles.
Yeah,
And
I
are
think
we
he flagged
keeping
that
that?
somewhere else. So,
Right,
We did.
I think you did too.
Yeah, so same deal. All right,
Yep.
take out.
Are we
Yeah,
keeping
he
that at
flagged
15
that.
miles?
Yes,
Second
we're just going to
page.
take out the word approximately.
Yeah, second.
Okay, because the rental is 30.
Rental is 30 miles.
But we're going to change,
I'm just,
yeah, I would keep it at 15. I mean, for now, unless we figure it out. And then because Evan and I are working on making changes to the nuisance and the rental property ordinance, because it's just confusing, but essentially nuisances are spread out across all of the borough's codified ordinances. And what we want to do is pull out all of those nuisance regulations and put them into one ordinance.
Right.
Additionally, in the rental properties is 166. What's 112? Or do I have it backwards?
You have it backwards.
So rental properties
Currently, the way
yeah,
it is,
yeah.
112 is rental,
And then what's 166?
lead. only.
That's what it is. So we've got, things are split up weird. And so in chapter 112, where it talks about the duties of the enforcement officer, then it has an entire several pages that just get into rental properties, which should really be over in chapter 166, which talks about the Lead Smart program. So we need to break apart the ordinances so there's a clearer distinction of roles and it's just easier to use. So that's what we're working on, and I say that because it'll give us the opportunity then to make sure that the rental ordinance agrees with the short-term rental ordinance, meaning we can change the definition of person in charge, we can change that definition if we wanted to of miles. One of the reasons the difference doesn't bother me is because in the rental ordinance, we're dealing with long-term rentals. So if someone's 30 miles away versus 15 miles away, I don't really see that as an issue. However, with the short-term rental ordinance, we're talking about 1 week at a time. I think we want to have that person closer to the borough.
Right.
There's like, just with all the changeover and everything, making sure
Right.
that it's being kept up.
Right.
Somebody's got to be there to make sure it's getting, changed over in between. I agree with that.
I think we still need to identify, or no, I think we're okay actually with the fees. Was everybody pretty much in agreement over the $500 issuance of a new license and the $250 for renewal?
I kind of think we're selling the borough short, but they sound fair. So if that's what the solicitor recommended, I'm okay with it.
What are they up for?
And you know what, I'm just remembering that conversation we had in June, and I think I was supposed to do that analysis and I didn't, I forgot about it, I apologize. I could still do that though and call around.
Look at it this way too, because I've been in a situation where we got taken to court over residential rentals by an apartment complex. And ultimately, like, here's the big thing, like, you want to make sure that the borough is getting its fair share, but this is a license. So you have to generally be able to show that there's costs, that you're charging the fee to recoup the cost. So like in reality, if it works out to where it really only costs $100 a year with everything, whether it's special software to keep up with these things or enforcement people and all that, if you can break that down and it's like, whatever, a couple $100 per license, then you can get away with that plus some, as a, service, to the borough or whatnot. But, you get like 10 times more than what the cost is. I think that's where you gotta be careful with.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting gouging.
But at the same time,
Careful.
the town can put that money to use for the sake that they are running a business. I think
as long as
there's
we're in
nothing wrong with
range-
that. If
As
that's
long
the
as we're in
policy.
range with what other folks are doing, then we should be able to
Correct.
justify it.
Correct. Yep.
So what I can do is just in the next couple of days, try and accumulate some additional information on the fees.
What's included in that? Does that mean
they have to have an inspection of the property when they renew the license?
Yes, because that's all stipulated in there. Yeah. So it'll cover an inspection. I mean, we wanted to cover some additional, you don't know who's
Yep.
gonna make you go to court.
Resources.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
staff time,
Yeah.
just processing this stuff and, software that you need, all that stuff is cost. Yeah,
Well,
think
would
about
this
it that way.
also cover, because one of the things you're looking at is monitoring the sites to be
Yes.
sure that
I think
you've
there's an
got everything covered, that if somebody has one within the borough, that they are licensed.
Yeah.
That they are registered.
and they're
So-
they're not standing out as being in poor
Right.
repair or whatever. But it takes being proactive, and that takes time, so you
Mhm.
gotta make sure that those costs are covered too.
Well,
But I think people, especially if it expands, people will have an expectation that there's a little bit more being proactive and trying to keep an eye out for it. But
And the
you
other
have to be
thing,
able to have the resources.
the other thing is these fees would be adjusted on a yearly basis
Right.
also, because they've got to be part of the fee schedule that the borough adopts
Yeah.
each
By
year.
resolution.
well,
by
so if,
resolution.
if planning commission decides to move this to the regular meeting agenda, what we can do is it'll be on September's regular meeting,
Mhm.
which would give us time for me to just do the research, make a recommendation, and then when the motion is made in September, we can firm up what that fee schedule looks like.
And that'll be the final version after the changes are made.
So I'll make a note of that. So we'll take out approximately, and that'll take care of his next comment. We still have to make a determination as to liability insurance. I think most people use $1 million anyway, but I'll talk with Evan about that as well. He didn't comment. I think for his comment number 5, I looked at this and I don't believe his comment, it's on page, it's about the noise ordinance, page 4. And I sent an email to Mark and Paula back a couple of weeks, 2 months ago. And I thought I looked into that, and it's not apples to apples.
No. Say something when it's all done, They can probably get edited out anyways.
What's this?
10 a.m. to 8 p.m. I would imagine. Oh, quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Okay, so what do you think might be different?
Now, I'm trying to find, I remember looking into this, and I'm seeing if I can find the email. We met, that was the end of May. Give me a second.
I don't have any notes there on that, whether we referred from that 10 PM, 8 AM, 12 AM, 8 AM.
I'll have to look into that. I remember looking, and maybe it was in the nuisance ordinance, and I remember seeing that it wasn't quite apples to apples. It couldn't be this, the language couldn't be the same necessarily. But I can't quite put my finger on that email yet. And since we're going to be reworking the nuisance ordinance anyway, it's something that we can just make sure picks up the short-term ordinance.
So for now, that will stay as is 10 PM, 8 AM, 12 AM, 8 AM.
And outside of that, there aren't any other additional comments. We have some highlights in here for some information that still is needed. Our goal was to try and reference different sections of the nuisance ordinance, but the nuisance ordinance is going to come after that, so more than likely those references will have to come out and then be added at a later date.
So that all will stay on the end. Or it has nuisance in there, it'll stay until the new ordinance
The
is
whole thing will
adopted,
stay,
regardless.
the whole thing is gonna stay. What I don't have is the appropriate sections to reference.
Got it.
So you would reference appropriate sections there and in
Yeah.
10 under D.
More than likely, what we're gonna end up having to do is another amendment to this, maybe a couple of months from now. Once we get the nuisance and the rental property ordinance approved and updated, then we can go back and reference those sections.
You have to do it to allow, right? Yes.
Do you wanna, like, include it in prohibited items, fire pits? Or isn't that?
Only if you guys want to. I'm not particularly concerned.
I'm just saying everybody wants fire pits.
And they're allowed to have fire pits, they just have to be the specified distance away from.
They have to be permitted, so it doesn't really matter if it's in here then.
Do they have to be? I know they have to be a
They have
specified,
permit for it.
They have to be permitted.
do they? Yeah, so then,
Right.
as long as they have a permit, then I think that they can do it.
So you don't need to add that, it's just assumed that they know that.
Again, if you guys would like to add it,
I'm just posing the question.
probably, it,
I just wanna make sure.
I can see reasons to add it, just to make sure that everybody's being transparent and communicating on the upfront. You know, if a fire pit is on premises, then the appropriate permit must be applied for.
It would help the fire department to know who has them. Do they, who has them?
No. They do not. We do them in-house.
Okay.
Do you have an issue with that at all?
No, I think it should be
Okay.
added because it is
And where is that being at?
an issue.
I would add it under. Probably under standards,
Under D?
D, yeah. So I'd coordinate with you, Paula, for the verbiage, but I think it would say a valid permit for a fire pit must accompany the rental permit license if such a feature is provided on site, something.
Would you require that for an outdoor grill or any type of outdoor oven?
Well, I think we have to go by what's in the ordinance, and I'm pretty sure we're talking about fire pits and chimeneas. It's gotta be, I can't quite remember what the legislation is, but we'd have to match it up to whatever we have in the codified
It's
ordinance.
more open, an open
Right.
fire, open flame as opposed to anything that's contained.
Do you remember what that permit's called?
Fire pit?
Mm-hmm.
Call fire pit permit.
That's pretty easy. Okay.
I have them out here. Do you want one?
No. No, I just want to make sure.
Sorry.
Is there an application out there for them?
Yeah, all the applications are out there on the wall now. Thanks. I needed that little giggle.
Okay.
Do you mind if I ask, and I'm sorry, because I know that we have discussed this a lot at them, but, and I appreciate all of your work and the solicitors, but back to where it says the permitted uses in the zoning districts, I'm still kind of struggling with that because I know that we're gonna be combining districts and that's not finished yet, so it's hard to know exactly how these will end up being. But we talked about the medium density residential and the neighborhood commercial. And I'm just concerned that once they're there, it's harder to take them away than to once the map's changed and they might comply, add them.
Medium density residential business is gonna go away and it's going to become, A commercial. It's going to become a mixed use zoning district, so that doesn't concern
So
me.
mixed use
We would
would
want to have
be
them there.
fine, right?
So,
Medium density residential business is where they are now.
right, exactly.
That's where they are now.
So then I would advocate for eliminating neighborhood commercial.
That's up to you guys.
On the map.
I wouldn't,
These are the current zoning district.
these are the current zoning districts, and
So
the
there
new
have to be a
ordinance,
change
I
at
don't
some
have,
Yeah, I didn't very much.
I had to do it, but I could change it to just-
but neighborhood commercial is, all of those things are going to go into, the intent was to condense the number of zoning districts.
Right.
So we were promoting, I can't remember what it was, but I remember the districts that were a mix. So the medium density residential business, the neighborhood commercial, those were all going to be
The future
a
land
mixed
use.
use. Yeah, it's all in the future land use map.
Have that.
Let me sign into my computer and I can pull this up real quick.
I think I would rather have a list of the zones that it will be permitted once we change them than what they are.
We can't, they don't exist.
Well,
See, that's the
but if we
part.
have.
Oh, yeah, we haven't come up with the names yet.
But, and we do have that, we did go over that, so give me a second to pull it up. But we can't reference future land uses in the zoning ordinance, they don't bear any
Right.
weight.
But for our conversation, we could know, because if we were to say, like, decide that we don't want it to be neighborhood commercial, and then neighborhood commercial becomes something that is permitted, well, then what's the point in having that conversation?
I can't hear, I don't know that I heard everything you said, Nathan. Is your
It is.
microphone on? Can you speak into it? What did you?
I mean, I just think it's a bit frustrating to have a conversation about what might be permitted and what might not. And if we were to, as a group, decide that we didn't want it to be in, for example, neighborhood commercial, and then it were to change and neighborhood commercial were to be eliminated and become something where it is permitted, then what was the point of having that conversation? Do you see what I'm-
Yes. What about, so I get the catch. The catch is there aren't like the new zoning district. They're not set up, like they don't have
Right,
names.
they haven't
Right.
been combined yet.
But
And then
when the districts change, like this sort of thing that references the zoning districts is going to have to change, which means at some point, we're gonna have to figure out which ones are gonna be in
And
the next
when those-
ordinance.
yeah, when
Where are the areas that we're gonna have this is as close to what we're adopting now
we
as
can,
possible.
we can only adopt an ordinance for the zoning districts that we currently have in place. Despite our very best intentions, that there could be something that happens where that future land use map doesn't get implemented or doesn't get implemented in the manner in which it looks currently. That is not
Right.
abnormal. So if and when the borough's zoning map is updated to reflect those future land uses, it would be a wholesale update to the ordinance, which means this section would also be amended to reflect the wishes that are currently in place at that time. So just because it's allowed in one district and those districts change, doesn't mean that you're stuck allowing it there. Zoning regulations change all the time depending upon what the administration wants to see and what changes have been wrought over time. So
What's the time frame for the next zoning map?
it's whenever we can get to it, and
But I mean, like, is that in like another year? Because I'm thinking like big picture, like when
it can't
when
be,
is council gonna actually adopt something that we finished?
and I
Is it
don't
gonna
think
be a
any of
year
us
or
can
two?
answer that question because
Yeah.
of the leadership transition we're dealing with right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Revising and amending and wholly, rewriting a zoning ordinance is a big job. It's a political job. You want to have all hands on deck, and you need to have some management in place, I think, in order to accomplish something like that.
So you're looking like a year and a half.
I
So,
can't answer that.
but I mean, like realistically, So we will have to figure that out in the bigger context of finalizing the zoning map. We'll have to keep this in mind, like what are the
Right.
parallels to what's gonna be adopted now? And then we're talking a year or so
Because
later.
in the meantime,
How does that
they'll
relate to
be-
the new
they
map?
can exist,
And,
and then they'll be grandfathered.
So Nathan, I mean, he's on the right track, and I was thinking, well, maybe we could work on this the next meeting, but it's like, if we're not, if
Time out
things aren't
though.
moving for a year and a
Ti-
half.
Time out, they're not grandfathered in because every short-term rental needs to have a license that needs to be renewed.
right,
If
Yeah.
the land use regulations change and it's no longer permitted, they're not getting a renewed license.
and,
Right.
That makes sense.
and unless I'm having issues with color here, the only areas of this town that I am seeing as neighborhood commercial is CVS,
Really?
and up in the area that's bounded by 462 9th Street, Wright Street, Avenue S, up in that area where Peter Lumber, if you remember Peter Lumber and Keel Cole, that's where I'm seeing
Do
I
you
mean, I was only
have
mentioning neighborhood commercial.
neighborhood
Can you pull up
commercial.
I don't actually
files
have
on
one.
here? Can
No.
we,
Yeah.
I need to see the
Well,
materials
just
from our
because it's
March and
within
April work session
neighborhoods, and so that you have
to answer that question about
Residential.
regional
Am I
land use.
seeing that?
housing.
Oh, it's- there's-
I struggle with
There used to be a lot of-
Now,
So
they were commercial.
I mean, they were all through town, butchers.
Close to that.
grocery
We'll call that
stores,
lilac.
air
Okay,
conditioners.
you need to interrupt.
Industrial.
Guys,
And we'd like to bring it
Guys, we
back.
can't, none of this can be recorded. So if we're having a conversation, it's gotta be through, just because we have the public here and it's a public meeting, nobody can hear the dialogue going on. So keep going, but
What you mean?
we need to have the conversation in a
Oh,
public
man.
fashion.
Okay. Well, we were just looking at the zoning map to see where these districts are.
Yes, and I'm trying to pull up that information because that was the very first work session we did.
Yeah.
When was that? And I'm
May,
I'm having a problem
May?
looking in my files.
May?
Because you're looking at commercial recreation. And where
Go to
I'm seeing
workshops.
that is Black
No.
Mountain,
Back.
out
Go
in
to
that
workshop.
area. Highway commercial is your largest,
That's red.
Was that,
that's your
is May the
red,
first one? Go back. One more
along
hour.
462, and then out along 30.
Yeah. Yes, okay. So it was May.
Institutional
Oh, it's one of those colors, Mary.
institutional residential.
Or packet.
Oh,
That's like up here, right?
It was May
Yeah,
21st.
that's more
Okay,
like
go the
The
packet.
towers.
John Hers
Uh,
up at Susquehanna, what used to be Susquehanna Nursing.
What else? I mean, otherwise, it's kind of.
Yeah, you know, these are very,
Right.
they're not really
nursing
very
homes and
big
stuff.
areas.
Mary, I remember when Jeff was here and we were just talking about these things and talking about where Tiff and I are in
Go back
Short
one to the
Fifth.
May one.
We're
It may
good.
And
There's
he
nothing in
actually
there.
said
May have
that
been before that.
one side of the
No,
street,
May was the first
even
one.
though there is stores there and there were stores on the other side, like Lively's and the produce and all of that, at one point, one side is zoned one thing. The other side of the street is zoned another.
Right,
Even though theoretically, the stores on one side and houses, stores technically could be, because they're still there,
right.
but vacant. So what is, well, I never really did get a definition of what we really are.
Or what
Are
your,
we
where you live?
neighborhood commercial?
Where you live, your house?
Yeah, because there technically could be stores, I mean, Donnie sold his house, so that's still a store that's vacant. And across the street,
You're high density residential.
And then, but
No, you're
we're
downtown
marked on them
commercial.
out for neighborhood commercial.
Is that where he's at, downtown?
Yeah,
You're downtown commercial.
you're downtown commercial.
And they changed it.
Just what that looks like to me.
Where were we? Yeah. So you on this side of Fifth?
Yeah, it's a little short.
Yeah, I think they did combine
The
that.
single digits.
You're on Riverside?
Going
Yes,
towards.
west side.
Yeah, you're downtown commercial.
I think we
Welcome
just
to
leave
the
it
club.
generic.
Sides of the street.
I don't know yet.
No,
No, I mean, most of the other side, but or like half of the other side, but not the houses, I don't think. Yeah, so you're downtown commercial, so am I. I think that's when the last change.
Right.
We got included in that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I think this is it.
so Jess, at this point, if we
Yes,
agree on this, would we move this to the meeting tonight for action?
no,
Or we have to wait till September?
I think we have to wait until September because technically for sunshine
It
laws,
has to be advertised.
well,
Has to be part of
we
the.
can't amend an agenda within 24
Right.
hours,
Right.
I think is the issue. So here, I found this and I can pass this around for folks to look at. So this was the analysis of how does the zoning map change into the future land use map and vice versa. So the new land use that we identified in the future land use map was downtown mixed use. Downtown mixed use was combined downtown commercial, riverfront commercial, medium density residential business, and the neighborhood commercial zoning districts. So those 4 zoning districts turn into downtown mixed use. So if we followed the future land use, then I think that short-term rentals would make sense in those areas and continue to make sense when we did the new future land use map, or the new zoning map.
No, it's not.
Downtown where it's.
More downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Mary and I were looking at the zoning map. Pardon me. We were looking at the zoning map. We were trying to find the areas of town that are institutional residential, because that's listed in the,
They're really hard to see because the color is super similar to high-density residential.
yes.
So there is no, it's the area, the only
Yeah,
way I know it is because it's of geographically where it's located.
yeah, these two.
So and it should be this too, because this is not high density, so it should be here.
This would be out around the
Hospital.
hospital.
Mm-hmm,
Okay,
yep.
but we said no on the high density residential.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Oh, he said good evening.
Airbnb is a retirement village.
Anything wrong with sometime with-
You know what, I find interesting, I'm digressing a bit here. Last week I was watching a program and it had to do with Hawaii and the fires.
Mhm.
And since then, the state of Hawaii has actually passed a law restricting short-term rentals
Wow.
because of the impact on the housing
Mm-hmm.
for the residents.
Who live there.
I just kind of, I was thinking of Nathan with his comment when we were discussing the short-term rentals, and expanding the area.
Yep.
And Nathan's discussion about the shortage of housing and that, and I just found that interesting that Hawaii has enacted that legislation.
It is actually a point in favor of not allowing short-term rentals in the high-density residential zoning district, because then you're not creating that conflict between short-term rentals and the availability of housing.
Okay. You know, needs.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I had a second envelope with all those names,
Yeah.
but I didn't bring it.
So, Nathan, what are your thoughts about our moving this in its present form forward?
I mean, we're not voting on this. It's finale tonight, so I don't have I'm not opposed to it.
Nathan, we can't hear you, I'm sorry.
You talk very soft.
I do. I'm not opposed to moving it forward to the next week to vote on, but I think I've already kind of made it clear, in my opinion, in general, about any expansion. That hasn't changed. So that's my thoughts. For the reasons that you just explained.
But I just reiterated, going back to what you had said previously. Okay, Marilyn, your thoughts?
Still on the fence, but I'm not quite sure which way I'm leaning because I'm never in favor of short-term rentals.
Okay, so
That's me.
thank you.
Like I said, I'm just concerned about expanding too far and then having to change that because it's harder to make it smaller once it's bigger. I'd rather try it, like expand it a little bit and then if the need arises, consider expanding it further in the future. But yeah, I've already expressed these two different areas of concern, but if the future land use map's gonna be combining them, I understand the mixed use point. I get that, so I'm torn as well.
Yeah, I agree. The concern of, if we are too far out, the concern of walking certain things back is tougher for ultimately this is legislative, it's council. So, you don't want to be in a situation where there's a lot of regrets. But that being said, even when we get to the final version in September and we say, okay, push this on to council, like it's going to be reviewed by council. And I would assume that all the council members are going to understand what part of town this is proposed to have effect. And then that way we can at least get feedback and they say, if there's consensus one way or another, changes can be made before it's actually adopted into law. That's my big caveat as this is pushed from the planning commission. Our job is to put a good draft on the table for them to consider. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
I agree with everyone on the panel. I don't want to see this expand too far out. And I think we have a good starting point, very well written. Jessica's done a great job. I'm not too keen on short-term rentals either. I've seen good and bad. Well, that's about where I stand. I'm mixed, kind of mixed.
One of the things, I don't know, just sitting here and trying to look at the zoning map and picture where these are, it might be helpful to have that visual to show these districts, not as part of this ordinance, but just as a visual that you could look and map. Like we were here trying to discern colors. And to be able to look and see, okay, this is commercial.
So you want me to bring an exhibit to the next meeting, to the regular
Is that-
planning commission meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Like a shape, yes.
Yeah,
And
Well, I
think-
can just mark up a zoning map,
right.
Yeah, and
honestly.
I think that's.
Is that okay, or do you want like a formally made beautiful
No.
map, or are you okay if I
I
just mark
just-
something up?
I just think something that like we were here trying to figure out colors.
Just to make sure, yeah.
Just
Yep.
to make sure that these are the areas we're talking about.
Well, and it is difficult because those colors on some of those items are so very similar. So as long as everybody's okay, what I can do is I'll take an 11 by 17 color of the zoning map with a Sharpie, and I'll identify all those areas that are gonna fall into.
Kind of nice to see the percentage of town
Right.
and reflect on.
Do you feel that's a good
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I think that sort of thing is crucial for council and everyone, because the last thing you want is anybody to say, I didn't know that was in or out. Like, if they don't look at the map, then that's on them, but to have it and to know, oh, that's that block or that block, I have concerns with something. You don't want that to be an issue.
So I came up with something good.
I think it was.
Okay, so,
More homework, Jessica.
Hmm?
More homework.
No, you're fine. No, this is fine. This is
Coloring
legislation. This is how it gets done.
Coloring class. Yeah.
I want to say, so that I'm not being perceived as too much of a making Nelly. I think the ordinance is good as written. The zoning is where I have hesitation. So, I think it seems pretty good, pretty solid. I would certainly be in favor of this taking place, but I have huge hesitations about expansion.
So with that caveat, we will have this on our regular planning commission agenda for September. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just where are we moving on from here?
So, like I said, I'm meeting with the borough solicitor next week to work on nuisance, and to straighten out rental property, and some other items that had started with Mark and Paula, so we'll get those moving forward. I know that we're also looking to do an accessory dwelling unit, or legislation for the zoning, for the zoning ordinance, because though we allow accessory structures, we don't actually have any legislation in the ordinance for ADUs, accessory dwelling units. So things like granny flats, apartments over a garage. So I think that that's the next thing I want to take to the planning commission, are a couple of examples of what accessory dwelling unit regulations look like, because there's a host of, a lot of municipalities stipulate that you can do it, but it can only be for an immediate family member. And once that need for the immediate family member is gone, then the unit can no longer be used. Other municipalities allow more flexible use of accessory dwelling units. And it just depends on what we want for the community. There are some positives for allowing accessory dwelling units. It gives older adults who have a fixed income a revenue stream that they can use. It obviously provides some much needed, very affordable rental housing, which is necessary. So it just depends on how you look at it. So I think that was the next item that we wanted to take a look at.
Okay, on this, as part of the council packet, there's an active legislative priority list.
I have that.
And PC reviewing now for short-term rentals. Text amendment related to 2019 rezonings in process with PC. Rezoning of North Second Street properties in process with PC. Downtown Business District text amendment in process with PC. And the
Are those?
no,
Okay, that's, I was like, wait a second.
not that I'm aware of at this time.
Well, so the 2019 rezonings, we did review those at the beginning of the year. And my recollection of that conversation was that at this point, there wasn't an urgent need to do any of these rezonings outside of a larger zoning ordinance update.
Right.
Okay.
And the last thing on there was accessory dwelling units, and it says that we are reviewing those now. And I did correct counsel that we have not seen anything on that, and we are not reviewing that yet.
Not yet, but
So,
I think that's coming. But the other items I'm not familiar with either,
No.
outside of the short-term rental. What are,
and I think those ones with the North Second Street properties and the downtown business district text amendments, I think those are things that we felt were not urgent at this time and would be part of a larger picture.
that was the area where the residents were really concerned about having the word commercial in their
Right.
zoning district? Okay.
Right.
And that was backed
Right.
off of.
Mhm.
What was what came after North Second?
Downtown business district text amendment.
Do you know what that was in reference
I
to?
have no idea what that was in reference to.
Derek, does that ring any bells with you? Yes? No, okay. I saw both this and this.
Yeah.
Eric, does that ring any bells with you? No?
No.
Okay.
So I have no idea what that one was about. I just don't remember what we've been doing with the downtown. business district. So,
Unless we wanted
The
to,
only thing I think of
increase-
is the mixed use when we discussed that.
Maybe. It seems like that would be together, right?
yeah,
I remember Mark did say something about either increasing it or taking areas that were shown as neighborhood commercial and maybe making them downtown.
I think that's what it was.
yeah.
Was that for to try to promote first floor businesses?
Yeah,
Mm.
That's what that was
it
for.
was mixed, yeah, have a
It
business
It
on the
was,
first
yeah,
floor and then
it was
living.
to promote, to turn the buildings that at one point had a storefront on the bottom that have now been turned into rentals.
Right.
Try to turn them back into storefronts with residential development.
Right.
Gotcha.
That was the goal.
Well, we still have time because that's fall of 2024. So.
We'll get right on that.
That's OTL on the list.
On the
Put it on the
list.
list.
Right, but
We'll
at
get
least
to
we
it.
have, been able to hash out what
I believe it.
it was being
Yeah,
looked at.
that's it. So that's all kind of part and parcel. of
Right,
The map.
right.
The
that's
map
part
is
of-
the key.
The map is
It-
the key.
It would make sense to update that table and take all of those items and move them underneath a header of revised zoning map and ordinance and include those as discussion points so that we don't lose them.
Mhm.
But it's,
It's good that they're still there,
Yes.
that,
Yep.
that we have these to look at.
and then push it to 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do we have any more for our work session this evening? We could have a little break here between the meetings if you so desire. And if that is the choice, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting at 6:47.
Second.
I have a motion from Tiff, I have a second from Justin. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you, guys. A pleasure to see all of you.
Okay.
Get Nancy.
Oh,
It was good, man.